What's up, chat? It's Tuesday. We're getting tactical again today on the live stream, and it's a good time. We're going to drink deeply, sup deeply of the delicious metagame of 11th edition Warhammer 40k because it's fucking wild right now, dude. Yesterday we talked about team format. We talked about some of the best stuff in teams. It's pretty straightforward. You take all the dispositions. Sometimes you take some different detachments for particular dispositions. You know, it is what it is. We're looking to get the best factions in there, and that's what team players are doing. But singles events, chat. Oh, excuse me. One moment. Chat, my light got knocked over. How will the background be green if my light is not there? Singles events, however, absolutely fucking gnarly, dude. The metagame's wild. We have Custodes to talk about. We have a weird Imperial Knight list. We have maybe my favorite Tyranid list of all time, as well as the insane Space Marine meta. The state of the Space Marine meta right now is absolutely fucking wild, dude. So that's what we're going to be hopping into. And basically, as we do often on this series, we're going to go through top singles events of the weekend and go through X1 results. So players that almost won, but didn't quite get there. And this is where the true innovation of the metagame, I think, comes out, because all of these lists that are like B tier and edging up to A tier that's where they get played. So let's talk about it. I think we'll start a little bit slow here. We do have some knights to talk about, and I'm very excited to talk about this particular list because this is something that everyone was theorizing was going to be absolutely nuts, and it did do fairly well. So at the Circuit Breaker GT, which is a 6-round GT, knights went 5-1, and they ended up going 5-1 with Gate Warden Lance. Now, if you haven't heard the, I guess, controversy about Gate Warden Lance, it's pretty wild. So this is a detachment that selects 2 objectives on the battlefield. It specifies objective markers, which is technically a game term for basically a non-terrain objective. However, it has been ruled, I think, universally that basically, because essentially no abilities, because Games Workshop can't get off their ass and actually FAQ their game, or errata their datasheets, if basically no abilities in the entire game have been changed with the new objective area versus objective marker terminology, that this ability refers to objective areas, right? But the difference between that and in 10th edition is that the objective areas are massive, like 10 to 12 inch buildings, whereas the objective markers from 10th edition were 40 millimeter tiny circles. So this effect triggers when you have a giant a line between those objective markers. You pick 2 objective markers on the battlefield. This allows you to either go diagonally across the middle, or you can go across like one flank, for example, wherever you think that the fight is going to be. And previously, it would give you basically almost like a single line that would go across. It was this little 40 millimeter thing. However, nowadays, it gives you this like 12-inch band of the table. So like a good, whatever, 20% of the table is affected by this buff, which gives you sustained hits 1, ignore hit modifiers, doesn't ignore ballistic skill modifiers, so it doesn't ignore cover, which is important. But a lot of people are stacking hit modifiers as long as you target a visible thing, and it turns off it turns on all of your stratagems. So a lot of the stratagems inside this detachment care about whether you are on your defensive line, which is that massive now like 12-inch band of the table. So this was like a meme detachment in 10th edition. It was like everyone thought it was like kind of cool. The mechanic was neat, but you never really played it. In the new context of 11th, it is fucking wild, which is absolutely insane. So that's pretty cool. I don't know. I think that's neat. We're also playing Dominus Foe Breakers, so we get the buffs for the Castellan, especially. We can give them +1 to hit, targeting enemies in terrain features. So that will, generally speaking, be also enemies that are inside your giant band of control, your defensive line. So you're getting ignore hit modifier, sustained hits 1, and +1 to hit, basically for all your Dominus. And we're taking 2 Night Castellans in order to benefit from that. Freaking wild, dude. One of them is bringing Archaeotech autoloaders, which is reroll the number of attacks that you have. The other one is Augury Halo. I don't know what that one does. Unfortunately, I'm not up to date on my Gate Warden Lance enhancements, chat. Hey yo, what's up?
Bucket of Steel Sybil donated 27 Canadian dollars and 99 cents through Super Chat. Hi. I know it's been a bit since 10th, but I wanted to share that I placed 24th at the Edmonton Open. It's cool to see how I've improved your videos and stream.
That's fucking sick, bro! Congratulations, Bucket of Steel Cable. 24th at Edmonton Open's huge. Congratulations, man.
Bucket of Steel
really appreciate it.
Donated 6 Canadian dollars and 99 cents through Super Chat. If you don't mind, would you take a minute to look at my record at the EdOp when you have time?
Absolutely, yeah. We can take a look at that after this list. That's absolutely massive. Congratulations, 1 year in, and you're I don't know, top
6,931
like 10% at a super
$5
major
through Super Chat. Can confirm. This detachment was gross to play against. There was just no way. Double gun Destrier also goes crazy here.
Oh, that's true. The Destriers have double guns. That's nuts. I'm actually, is there a way to, like, navigate back to the detachment from here? No, there's not. Get fucked. All right. This app is so weird. Let's go back. Is there particular synergy with the Destriers and, these guys? I guess they're really fast. They shoot a million times, right? So the sustained hits and, like, reroll hits is really good. Or critical 5s. You can also get +3 to your movement characteristic, so they can get D3 +3 on their like a 12-inch move baseline, and they advance, so they can get D6 plus D3 +3 movement. They just are in your deployment zone. They could move 24 and then still shoot. That's fucking sick. What is my super chat announcer has a Welsh accent? I don't know. That's the one I picked like 6 years ago when I set it up. I thought it was appropriate given that a large amount of the community was in the UK. I think was what I was thinking about. Dude, these are sick. And Destriers are baked into their covers. That's wild. The Destrier offense, I guess, like their ranged offensive profile doesn't seem that wild. This is crazy because the other thing too is, like, this is an almost, besides this Atropos, which is a good, like, sort of all-rounder, right? Anti-vehicle guy. This is almost entirely ranged attacks, which is basically nothing. You never see that from Knights. Knights oftentimes have to play combined arms because they are so limited activation.
931 donated $5 through Super Chat. Because the line is a thick boy.
He's so
like
thick.
28 inches. Remember, they get extra move on advances.
Right, so that's where the D3 comes in, right? Because they add an additional D3. So they go D3 plus they advance. So they could advance potentially 21, and then you could pay the strat to go an extra 3. So you could go 24 inches. I think I have my math correct. They can get an extra 12 between advancing and double movement or triple movement buffs, like, stacked on top. But, like, I mean, their guns are pretty good. I guess, like, sustained hits 1 on a strength 6 AP1, as we have been learning, it tends to be pretty solid if you have access to it, like ignore cover, especially with, like, crit 5s. So you can just run in there, and these guys will probably hand you, even if they're winning on 5s, they're probably handing you, I don't know, 4 or 5 saves at AP1 for 2 damage. And then the similar thing from the Bombard. I guess the Bombard, if it gets within 12 inches, which is very likely, it gets 2d6 plus 6 shots. So it's averaging like 13. So it's shooting 25 times at like X1, 2. if it can get close enough, which it probably can, because as we just said, they move 24 inches. Also they have towering. You're so right. In the context of like 10th edition, this profile was not that exciting, right? You're like, all right, bunch of AP1 bullshit. In the context of 11th edition, this is wild when you think about it. You're so right, chat. So, so you're hitting on 2s. You're gonna get ignore cover, critical 5s, and sustained hits 1, right? So we should be getting, out of 25-ish shots, we should be getting like close to, it's like 28 or 29 hits is probably the average. And then even if you're just wounding on 5, shooting a T11 vehicle, you're handing them like 9 saves at AP1. This is wild. That's nuts. And those are just the Destriers. And then there's 2 Knight Castellans and an Atropos behind them. Oh my god. Yeah. And then the Knight Castellans are almost certainly +1 to hit. Maybe +2 to hit if they can get close enough to you, and sustained hits, and all this other buffs. Not to mention the fact that Castellans are like on the top, they are relatively slow, so being able to gain bonus movement on those guys is very good, especially if you're trying to get around hidden and stuff. And you have to deal with these Destriers, which means you have to like move out to engage them, so the Knight Castellans have things to engage into. Like, Knight Castellans don't want you to play cagey against them. That's the point at which Knight Castellans have a really bad time. But if these Knight Destriers are just going to come out and find you in your deployment zone, the Castellans are going to shoot whatever's after them. Double Subductor squads for some additional utility as well. Although we are, I think, just playing Purge the Foe here. We can actually take a peek. We're just playing Purge the Foe. But it is good for backline objective holding. So if your opponent does have a maneuver objective where they're trying to get behind you and grab your home, you can screen that out with Subductors, or apply screening from deep strikes and stuff. This is wild. What a list, chat. Who would have thought that in 11th edition Gate Warden Lance might be meta? All right, we want to take a look at the Edmonton Open real quick. Let's see if we can find the BCP. Edmonton Wargaming Open. Nope, that's not right. Here we go. Nope, that's not right either. Here we go. We have found it. Boom. Purge Knights are awful to play against. Yeah, the unit count is so low. It's just like super hard to actually find the kills to actually score anything. Pretty wild. 24th place, right? Keaton Day. Let's go. Playing Drukhari, running Reaper's Wager. A Webway Walker Archon, that's cool. Dressar, Malice, double Cabs, triple Venoms, a Chronos, and the Archon, double Incubi, double Mandrakes, double Ravagers, a Disintegrator Cannon Ravager, which is interesting. Might be a little bit handier now that it makes them cheaper, right? If they don't take Dark Lances. Plus 2 heavy weapon scourge units, all Dark Lances, 1 Solitaire, so we can flip the wager back and forth, and a unit of Talos, because we can advance and charge with that, which is very exciting. And that attachment for 1 commander point. Sick. So it's... is the Archon in a cab squad? Is that kind of what I'm saying? Because it's like Malice or Incubi, Dressar or Incubi, and then this guy can deep strike, so you can blast people with the Cavalcade heavy weapons. That seems pretty cool. Or I guess the Hand of the Archon, probably. Which is neat. So Dark Age of Speeder Spam list? Yeah, I think we talked about some similar versions of it. I believe I have a recording of one as well, which was very fast. He's in the Cowboy Squad. He's Rapid Ingress. That's cool. Yeah. The Webboy Walker, for those who don't know, gives you Deep Strike. So there was a classic compo in this detachment for a while where you put it on a Solitaire, because then you could Deep Strike out of 18 and they couldn't shoot you on a Harlequin troop unit, and then you could advance and charge back in to like go hit them. So it was kind of like uncounterable, but it was very expensive. And 18-inch load op is like not the greatest thing in the world if you're trying to get up close and personal to people. So I think that got cut eventually. But I always like to see like this technology, because I think people forget about like how hard Drukhari deep striking can work. Drukhari has a lot of randomly deep striking stuff. I think what the thing that we we ran into the other day, I have a game. I don't think it's live right now, but it was it's scheduled for release. I played against Drukhari over the weekend, and they reminded me that fucking Venoms have deep strike, bro. I was like, what? The little transport? You're like, yeah, it comes from the sky, I guess. It's like, oh, fuck. So I thought I was screening the flanks, but I have to screen the fucking whole back line. This is brutal. Ended up being kind of a big deal. There's a Drukhari rapid ingressing you as you are actively trying not to give them screens to farm paint tokens off of is legitimately difficult. Ravagers do as well. I mean, it's like Gradites or whatever, where it's like, or Demons, where you're like, what? They have Deep Strike? You're like, yeah, like half the faction is Deep Strike. And that's just how it goes for these guys as well.
Adriong 6931 donated $2 through Super Chat. Mandrakes are obnoxious with mollies.
Mandrakes for the redeployment? Because she gets a redeploy, right? So you can infiltrate and then drop the Mandrakes back and then repo them later in the game. Pretty spooky. Malice is just like such a good unit, by the way. I know it's like not that big of a, it's not that crazy of a take, but I think especially nowadays that like, it feels to me like mass melees are a big thing. And in 11th edition, the combat distances of the game are really close. You are so often fighting within 12 inches of your opponent. And I've streamed so many games where people are just like, their whole armies are within 12 inches of each other. And Malice being able to hop out and project her command point tax and then jump back into a Venom every round is wild. So you can tax interrupts, you can tax overwatches, all reactive moves. You could just do that with Malice for free and then use a Venom to grab her back into the transport. It's fucking sick. Plus she hits kind of hard. Like she's got two melee weapons. She's got a devastating wound melee attack and then an extra one too. Swarmy in shambles. I played Swarmy for the first time in a really long time yesterday, and I'm gonna level with you, chat. I was not unhappy with him. I thought Swarmy was gonna be a silly goober, and he ended up being sick. We're gonna talk about Swarmlord quite a bit in a moment here, chat, because as I said before, this weekend includes maybe my favorite Tyranids of all time. I'm very excited to talk about it. There's some other interesting stuff we can talk about. How do we want to talk about Aeldari? Because Aeldari, it seems like, have been getting kind of the short end of the stick for the entirety of this edition so far. However, we did see at the Circuit Breaker GT, we saw Aspect Host at X11. So this is 4-1 loss and a natural 93-point draw. Which, if you can't count that as an honorary win, I don't know what that is. That's an insane record. But Cade Smerek over here, or Smerasek, excuse me, Smresek. Smrechek? I'm going to go with Smrechek. Basically scored almost all 90 plus, including the games that he lost. This is fucking wild. Playing Aspect Host with Disruption. Rocking Assermen, a Dire Avenger unit. Jane Czar with the Howling Banshee squad. Autarch Wayleaper with Strategic Savant. What does that do? That gives you +1 objective control to your unit. And then he's on Warp Spiders, so the Warp Spiders can flicker jump to go 27. So you can 27 and put, 12 OC onto an objective. Excellent for disruption play, by the way, because you have to take objectives and you have to go, grab the expansions and stuff like that. And being able to do that with a unit that moves 27 inches and then still shoots you is kind of sick. That's fascinating. It is expensive, 205 points for that, but you are probably going to kill something the turn you go in, and then you're also going to score a bunch of points. Lycus with another Warp Spider unit. I'm also curious. These guys took Power Blades on all of their Warp Spiders. No. The Exarch has Death Weavers and Power Blades, but not the Power Blade array. So he does have guns, and then he took one melee weapon instead of taking the double gun. Wave Serpent, which I have learned is apparently a base measuring unit right now, which feels unintended, but I don't know. Corsair Sky Reavers, Triple Fire Prism, Double Ranger, Shroud Runners, Swooping Hawks ×2. So basically just massively scoring focused. We are just printing money. We can hope that the Fire Prisms get enough damage through that we can kill things. Obviously, we do have a couple of interesting pieces of technology in here. Asherman is pretty helpful, plus Jane Czar to clear infantry. Asherman's star has fallen quite a bit though, because after, I believe it's that if you are set up on the battlefield, you are then ineligible to embark into a transport. So if you disembark your Wave Serpent, you are not allowed to go back in. So Azerman's kind of like this one and done guy now, and assuming that he's not in a position where he can hide. But I imagine what happens is that he jumps out and then shoots and then moves and either takes your objective or he moves back into line of sight, behind line of sight blockers. There are a lot of positions in the new layouts where there are L's in kind of aggressive areas of the table where you're able to, with a 7-inch shoot and scoot, you can hop out and shoot into the middle and then hide yourself. So I don't think he's totally dead, but the old play pattern where he would disembark a transport and then move and then shoot and then kill a unit and then move and then get back in the transport is obviously that you can't do that anymore. So that's pretty big. Elf trickery still exists. Yeah, I mean, we watched Liam VSL do it at the intro live stream there, right? So it is what it is. What's fascinating to me is just how you also get pretty good damage from a lot of the stuff with Lycus, right? Because you get critical 5-ups and you can get lethal and or sustain, or sometimes lethal and sustain. Especially go to the Dire Avengers because they shoot enough times. So that combination might be able to do some damage. And then, we do get stuff like you could debuff people with the Shroud Runners to then shoot them with the Fire Prisms. So it's not to say that there is no damage in this list, but it is very much, it feels very much like it's trying to get as many points as possible, which is wild. Pretty good, chat. Eldar getting some work done. I know I've scrolled around this list quite a bit, but we'll just do one quick review of it, because then I'm going to get a comment about somebody who says I jump around too much. So it's Asherman, the Dire Avengers, Jane Czar, the Howling Banshees, a Wayleaper with Savant, Lycus, and 5 Warp Spiders, Lycus with 5 Warp Spiders, 1 Serpent, 5 Sky Reavers, 3 Fire Prisms, double Rangers, Shroud Runners, double Swooping Hawks. And that's it. Played Deathwatch at Edmonton Open twice. Well, tail end of 10th edition, I think Deathwatch very popular, right? Mark Hurdle was still on Deathwatch, and I think from time to time, Innes Wilson ended up being on Deathwatch. So it's not unsurprising that we saw Deathwatch pretty consistently. All right. I would like to now talk about a faction that I have seen get some flack in recent 24 hours. we've even given them some flack for being poorly designed, but I've seen some flack because people think that they are worse versions of other factions. And then we'll see how that ends up going, because they did fairly well this weekend, and that is Adeptus Custodes. So at Circuit Breaker GT, we will talk about Calvin Foster, who went X1, running Lines of the Emperor and Might of the Moritoi, running Adeptus Custodes. He's running a bunch of Virtus Praetors. It's 2 Shield Captains and Dawn Eagle jet bikes. One of them has the extra damage enhancement, or the extra strength and EP enhancement. One of them has the extra attack enhancement. So the both of them hitting pretty hard. And then, interestingly, they're all running Hurricane Bolters, which is curious. So that's, I think it's a 6-shot, 2 damage gun. Is that right?
Edriong 6931 donated $5 through Super Chat. Raise his hand. How do you disembark a Wave Serpent if it base measures?
That's a fascinating question, chat. I believe there is a rule, I think, that says like you can count yourself as close as possible if you are, or you can count yourself like as base contact if you are as close as possible to the model. There's a rule for like overhanging miniatures that allows you to be in base contact with them. So it might just require that you basically set up in base contact with the hull of the transport. In any case, I think it's an oversight. I'm gonna fact check myself on the Wave Serpent thing, because I was told that and I haven't actually looked at myself. Yeah, no, it is true though. They, for whatever reason, do not have the frame keyword. Problematic. For some reason, Aeldari transports always have this problem, because I think they're kind of like inexpensive and flimsy, but they're fucking massive. They're like the size of a Land Raider, because of their big wings and stuff. But like, they're these little guys, these little silly goopers. But the other thing is that they're typically hull measuring vehicles on a flight stand, which always cause problems because like horizontal measuring's the thing. In 8th edition, this is one of my favorite rules of all time. And it was a rule that literally no one played with, because like there was a general consensus within the community that the game would destabilize at a fundamental level if you ever considered that this was how the game worked, which was that when you measured your engagement range, there was no vertical engagement. So it was always, in that case, it was 1 inch. So you measured 1 inch from your base. That may mean that if you're a base measuring model, your engagement range comes up to like your waist, right? If I'm a Space Marine and I'm on the little puck on the ground, my engagement range comes up to here. I can't fight things that my arms are near. I fight things that my belly button's near. Really weird. Bizarre rule. Which meant that if you assembled Wave Serpents correctly, these things were too tall to be engaged by ground units. Anything that didn't hull measure, so it didn't have any verticality to its engagement range, could not engage them because they were more than 1 inch, like 1 point, whatever it is, like 1.25 inches off the ground or whatever the base thickness is. Absolutely fucking unhinged. And that was just never changed. They never eroded that. They never did anything with it. Everyone collectively said, we're just gonna pretend that you measure vertical engagement to explicitly this model. Because this is basically the only model it's relevant for. And also like Drukhari Raiders and stuff like that. Just a problematic model confirmation. Put this motherfucker on a base, chat. We've got big bases now. We could just say they go on a big base and they have a base. But no, we have to put them on a little tiny base that's underneath their hull. And so that they always break off and swing about on the table. Woo! Fucking wild, dude. Farseer within the Wave Serpent wings was unchargeable. Yeah, that was a thing for a while. Yeah, if you put them right in the crevice there, it was you couldn't declare them as the target. You had to declare the Wave Serpent as the target, and then basically kill the Wave Serpent, and then the guy would run away. It was fucking wild. Just very stupid. Played the Wave Serpent with the frame keyword. Yeah, I mean the issue is that like is it like supposed to represent, because they did it very consistently. I think it's basically the entire Eldar faction essentially lacks the frame keyword, which would be wild for them to forget, right? It would be just like, because I think like Falcons also have the same thing, right? Yeah, no frame, fire prism, no frame. I don't know if the little guys do. Like Vipers have a big base, so they might be okay. No frame, but it's like the entire Eldar faction doesn't have it. So to some extent, you're like, are they trying to do something like mechanical where they're like, well, they're hyper maneuverable, so we're not going to give them the frame keyword so that when you move, they shrink down to their base size to go through gaps because they can go sideways or whatever. Is that the idea? Or did they forget literally a whole faction of the game? I don't know which one of those is more likely. Like an entire faction they forgot to errata? Brother. What? Absolutely insane. The Inari Venom does not have frame, the normal Venom does. In fairness, Venoms should not have frame at all. The Venom is actually like a problem with frame because Venom's base is larger than its miniature. So there's no reason for it to have frame. It just makes it weird because sometimes you measure your range to the little banner on the back. Like, why are we doing that? Just fucking make it base measure. It's crazy. Absolutely wild. Anyway, Chance. You know what else has frame? Dawn Eagle jet bikes. Getting back to the point at hand, which is also wild. I had a whole rant about that yesterday because it's really stupid. It's extra stupid, I think, for Virtus Praetors to have frame because they are really, really big. However, if we go and take a peek over here at our data sheet, we are running mass hurricane bolters, which is interesting on these guys. So these are rapid fire 3. They go to 6 shots. They're twin length, strength 4, AP 1 for 2 damage. Now, obviously, they sometimes will hit on 3s because of the ballistic skill characteristic modifier. However, they get +1 to hit if they're all by themselves because of Lines of the Emperor. So they will still basically hit on 2. They essentially will get ignore cover, right? Because even if they're ballistic skill 3, they're going to get +1 to hit, so they're going to hit on 2s. They also get +1 to wound, so they're wounding everything on no worse than a 5, and then giving you an AP 1 2 damage save. So this unit of 4 guys, if they can get to within 9 inches of you, will shoot 24 shots, hit on average what? They'll miss 4, so they'll hand you about 10 saves at AP 1 for 2 damage. So a lot of times it's good for like 10-inch damage for shooting.
6,931 donated $5 through Super Chat. One final thing. The flag and guys in the Venom are optional lol. Also, don't the Praetor spears count for being in engagement?
Yeah, I mean, modeling on hull measuring is basically the entire problem with hull measuring. If your miniature, it would be less of an issue if it would not zero of an issue, but it would be less of an issue if your miniature was like a die cast thing that could never be altered, right? If there was no mutability between 2 identical models, then who really gives a shit, right? However, when you add modeling into it, there's like an argument to be made for logistics, which is fine. But as soon as you add modeling into it, frame keyword stuff gets fucking wild. A good example is not only like the optional bits on like Venoms, and obviously these fucking Dawn Eagle jet bikes, bro. Why is this frame keyworded? A unit where all your spears are in all different, your lances are all different directions, so each of your miniatures is dramatically different from a measuring standpoint. It also makes them really awkward to maneuver around terrain as well, because they can either get body blocked by their own spear or have their spear put them inside a terrain feature, which then gets them shot. But the other thing is that, like if you have, like even bigger models, I think that a really good example right now or in 10th edition were Land Raiders. The Custodes Land Raider, basically everyone and their mom used the Custode or the Land Raider from Horus Heresy, which is different than the 40k Land Raider. And Everyone was like, well, it's fine. It's a Land Raider for Warhammer, you know? And it even makes more sense that the Custodians would have this one because they have a venerable Land Raider, and this one is the older Land Raider pattern. However, it's like 3/4 of an inch smaller, especially on the side. The sponson mounts are flipped vertically instead of horizontally, which changes their conformation on the table, which dramatically changes how it interacts with terrain. And everyone was like, kind of fine with that, but there were times in which it does very much matter. It's just a problem. It's not an issue we should be dealing with in the year of our Lord 2026. We have the technology in many different ways, even retaining vehicles without bases. We have the technology to repair these issues, right? We can use projection measuring. We can diagram what their hull is, right? We can just tell you, draw this outline on the table. That's their base. And then we play from that. It's not ideal, but it's cleaner. But of course, Games Workshop refuses. I don't understand it. It's not quite true line of sight, but it is true line of sight adjacent. And it's like two things that are, it's just really old game design. It's old, crusty game design from the 1980s. That's like, you know, like mildly racist and, you know, it has to wear a colostomy bag and can't like get out of bed without, you know, just fucking dunking a bunch of Advil. And, maybe we should put it down. Maybe it's time to put it out of its misery. fucking wild. Just give everyone frame. Absolutely, chat. Yeah, I don't know. Fucking stupid. Absolutely wild. Anyway, chat. Yeah, just Old Yeller it. Old Yeller the frame keyword, dude. We could do it. We have the technology. One of the things that I think this and we were talking about this on the Discord the other day, but one of the things that I'll get back to talk about the list in a moment. That the edition transition has really highlighted for me is that like I think the design of 11th edition is it should be lauded because it is so much more interesting than 10th edition. 10th edition was a step up in terms of like the legibility of the game, but a step down in terms of its like its game design, right? The game design philosophies behind 10th edition were kind of silly. In 11th edition, there's a lot more player agency. You give a lot, like there's a lot more skill expression, in my opinion. And there's like a lot more sort of build variety. A lot of things are going the correct direction, but there's some really low hanging fruit that's just really lazy. And I think all of this stuff is a very good example. Like just not having a guy, and it would probably take, if I had to hire a human to do this, I bet it would take them a week, where they just go through every datasheet and they have a list of like templates that they have to change, right? We're going to change deep strikes from 8 to 9 inches. We're going to change, whatever, you know, some abilities to trigger at the end of the phase. We're going to change all references to objective markers to objective terrain, blah, 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 right? Just bring it up to speed. And honestly, you don't even really need like a list of templates. You just have to have somebody who knows the mechanics of 11th edition, which you should have. You have a dozen people in the design studio who have written these rules. They should know these. If they don't, we have a problem. Just have one of those people take a week and go through every datasheet. And then just change the things they need to change. It's clear they didn't do that. And it's creating all sorts of problems. Fucking wild, dude. I don't know, chat. Absolutely insane. Anyway, folks. Let's hop in and talk about Adeptus Custodes. We're done talking about frame keyword. I swear. Chat, you guys know how to trigger me, though. All you have to do is bring up frame keyword and true line of sight, and I'll fucking have a crash out. Anyway, here's some Virtus Praetors. This list is cool because it's taking 2 units of them. I think that's neat. I think it's very neat and cool. And I think the switch from salvos to hurricane bolters is very interesting. The damage output is really there. You can kill like a rhino equivalent pretty consistently just by shooting with hurricane bolters from these guys. That's really cool. We have triple Caladius grav tanks, just blast people, get wrecked. 1 Telemon heavy dreadnought, double Arachnid storm cannon. That's for the Might of the Moritoi detachment stuff. because you can rapid fire his guns, which is sweet. I don't know what interred expertise does, but I'm sure we can look it up. We have the technology for that. That gives us reroll hits and wounds of 1. Sick. And then the dude's already faster than normal and can get extra shots with the Storm Cannon Array. He's firing so many devastating shots that he does pretty legitimate damage with this thing. Have I seen and recovered the Games Workshop judges ruling on Fight on Death that you wait until you activate the unit? That's not just the judges ruling, chat. That's just the rule in the rulebook. They just wrote it down. That's not like any particular judge like sort of interpreting rules in a funny way. That's just literally what the rules say for you to do. It feels very poorly written, or I don't want to say poorly written. It's very straightforwardly written. I think it's poorly considered because the implication of having a destroyed model remain on the table is really bad. Previously, we didn't have anything that did that, but now we have a billion things that do that, and it's really bad. We then also have another Virtus Praetor unit, so we're up to 3 Virtus Praetor units. This one is unattached, but also running Hurricane Bolters, plus double Witchseeker units as well. This is really cool. Custodes Bikers are back, chat. Not on my bingo card for the Year of Warlord 2026. I would have expected Custodes to be the faction of teleporting infantry that hit really hard, that jump into go to ground and then move and shoot and move and charge you. But it turns out Dawn Eagle jet bikes are just fine at doing that, and they can shoot your infantry to death anyway without having to deal with the having to charge them and stuff, which is pretty wild. Yeah, it's the fight on death rolls are weird. They're buried in the destroyed model rules for some reason in the app. And there's a whole section with diagrams of how it works. And it is explicitly that when you have a fight on death ability affecting you, you remain on the battlefield until such time as your unit is selected to fight. Which means if your opponent charges you with a million things, those models just sit there for the entirety of for all time. It's not a good rule. It's very bad. Not to say that it's not straightforward or unclear, but it is, it's right there. I want to talk about a different version of Adeptus Custodes. Now, it's the same detachment combination, but I'm curious a little bit here because something clearly happened in one of these games. It is over at the Second City Games Anniversary GT. This is Tyler White, and I don't know what happened here. Tyler had 200-point wins, a 95 and a 99, and then a 0-point loss, which probably means either a concession or an adjudication, which was the only loss in his record, which I am interested in. I don't know what happened there, but something happened. You otherwise can't get a 0. Because at the very least, if you play the game, you get 10 points for Battle Ready, because his other results include Battle Ready points. So a 0 is certainly something specific. I don't know what's up with that. However, this list is playing the same detachments, but running Alaris Custodians. He's the one who knocks. You don't get back from lunch? Yeah, maybe. Well, that was round 3, so that would have been pre-dinner break, I guess. I mean, he could have just conceded it and left early or something if something came up, I guess. That's definitely conceivable. So this is running the same detachment combinations. We are running a Hurricane Bolter Dawn Eagle Jetbike, or we are running 2 Hurricane Bolter Dawn Eagle Jetbike Shield Captain units. However, we are compounding that with an Alaris Custodian, an Alaris Terminator unit with Admana Mortis. So that's where our other damage enhancement ends up going. This is dropping a Caladius Grav Tank in order to get that, and switching out our additional Virtus Praetors for Venetati Custodians. Interestingly, we are taking Might of the Moritoi here, but we have no Moritoi with which to might. However, Might of the Moritoi, I believe, unlocks Purge the Foe, which means that it is an example of a detachment taken explicitly for its force disposition. It has absolutely no synergy with this list whatsoever. You cannot use its stratagems or abilities on literally anything inside the list, except it gives you access to the Persian foe detachment or force disposition. So you can play the killy missions. But interesting to take the Venatari Custodians here with lances. The Lions of the Emperor does affect their guns pretty well when they drop in and shoot the lances. But what it doesn't do is affect them very well in melee because they just have lance in general. So they hit on 2s and wound on +1 in most of the time anyway. However, these guys are very good for harassing your opponent's backline. Especially with the new hidden rules. If you have fast infantry, these guys can drop in outside 15 of you and guarantee themselves a 6-inch charge into whatever's screening them. And then probably clear that up and objective consolidate and steal an objective with 6 OC. So they're like an incredibly strong sort of disruption unit that can threaten objectives, which is super duper helpful. So that's some Adeptus Custodes. I want to take a moment and talk about are there any other lists that I'm interested in? And then we can talk about Space Marines, maybe. I think was where we're going to go next. There's a lot of Space Marine results we get to go through. Oh, actually, yeah, there was a Genestealer, I think, list that I wanted to discuss momentarily, which is interesting. If I can find it. There it is. So back at the same event, Second City Games, we did have Genestealer cults at 4-1 using a pretty interesting combination. Xenocreed Congregation plus Xenocult Masses. So Xenocreed Congregation is the reroll advance and charges for your Acolyte units. That's Acolyte hybrids, Neophyte hybrids, hybrid metamorphs. And you get as long as you have a character inside the unit. If the character is Magus Primus or Acolyte Icon Ward, they also get a 3+ feel now pain while leading the unit, which has been ruled, of course, as affecting them permanently because they are always leading a unit as long as they are on the battlefield if they started in the unit. So, while in the way the rules currently work, you can't reanimate that unit, it will make the individual characters very difficult to kill, which is interesting. There's also a thing that reroll charges tends to be pretty strong in general because it gives you rerolls on heroic interventions, which you normally don't get. So if you have a charge reroll ability affecting you, you can heroically intervene with a little bit more, a little bit less conservatively, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because because you can try for longer charges without taking the gamble that you fail. The real downside of heroic intervention in this edition, it triggers a lot, but a lot of times you are just like fishing for 8s or 9s or whatever, and it's pretty unlikely that you hit them. A baked-in charge reroll, because you can't both heroically intervene and command reroll your charge, makes it much more consistent, which is very cool. So that's fascinating. I don't know if we've seen this detachment very often. We do have this cool stratagem where you reroll hits against something that kills your characters. And given that a lot of times you are playing Genestealer characters kind of as utility, they can run forward and do actions and things like that, which is neat. I think that's really cool. We also have +1 attack and weapon skill characteristic for non-characters, but they have hazardous, which, as we've learned, is a little dangerous for 1-wound infantry units, but it is what it is. And your opponent's movement phase, you can cult ambush your guys basically anywhere. You just rapid ingress them for 2. Downside is, of course, that the way the rules work currently, your units that have characters in them won't be able to respawn, so you don't get much use out of that. But the other thing that we're doing is comboing that with Xenocult Masses, which is the like Neophyte Hybrid detachment. So this gives you, as long as your Neophyte Hybrids are hiding in a trained area, they heal 3 wounds, in addition to their banner, which also heals them. So this gives them essentially, like, they almost just return to full strength if you have a 10-man inside a train feature that's holding it down. This does occur because it's in command phase. It is after you take battle shocks, so it is the timing is not ideal for them, but it does let them drop OC onto an objective, assuming that they do live. And you can keep them relatively survivable with this stratagem, which gives you -1 AP targeting that unit. The goal is to basically leave the icon bearer alive. So anything that has that unit live on just a couple of wounds is going to be incredibly strong. So very interesting combination of effects. And in this list, we're bringing a Primus plus a huge unit of Neophyte Hybrids, an Abominant with an Aberrant unit. The Abominant can be used for their stratagem, the reroll stratagem, and I believe it even can be used multiple times because it's a destroyed trigger. So if the Abominant is destroyed and then reanimated and then destroyed again, you can basically use Vengeance for the Martyr twice. It does only trigger on rerolls of 1, but it does give you a little bit of extra use out of that. We have an Acolyte Icon Ward plus a Biophagus in a Hybrid Metamorph unit, so we can buff them with all the extra attacks and things. We have a Magus with Deeds that Speak to the Masses. That gives you 2 additional Resurgence points, so you can bring back more people. In a big Neophyte Hybrid squad to give them... give them lethal hits, and then obviously if we can trigger rerolls on something by losing an important character, then we're going to be triggering those lethal hits quite a bit. We have a Reductus Saboteur plus a Sanctus, double Acolyte Hybrids with Hand Flamers, a Goliath truck to carry them around, 2 units of Achilles Ridge Runners, one with a Survey Augur and a Heavy Mortar, so we can give crossfire and ignore cover to people. We have another one with Heavy Mining Lasers, so we have some anti-tank. 3 units of Atalan Jackals and a unit of Prestream Genestealers, which is where all of our Resurgence points are going to be going. Absolutely fascinating list. Definitely very different than the traditional sort of Ascension hosts that we've seen quite a bit in the past, but a little bit punchier, I think, especially in the fight phase, than those lists, which is pretty cool to see. Seems good, Chant. All right. Let's talk about... I think that's all the non-Space Marine lists that I want to talk about. I think it is time to talk about Space Marines. I'm into it. Now, I want to talk about this sort of cutting edge of the Space Marine metagame, which is pretty wild. Doomsday Arcs also don't have frame. Jesus Christ. That's so stupid. That's like, it's been 2 weeks at this point, right? Like, come on, we can fix that shit, dude. We gotta fix that shit. When is the point where it gets to the point where I have to complain about it and make a video and we can poop on them for a little bit? Is it 3 weeks? Is it the end of the month? The 20th? Like 10 days, I guess, since official release, and that stuff hasn't been fixed. Like, that's basic bitch stuff, right? If you want to, change a billion data sheets, like, that's something, but forgetting to add the frame keyword to things is, like, pretty wild. All right, so the cool thing about a lot of these Space Marine sub-factions is that they do get some pretty neat detachment combinations. And because a lot of their specific detachments end up being 2 detachment points, you can add an additional 1 detachment point on top of that. So in this case, a lot of people are playing this combination of effects: Forage Father's Seekers and Librarius Conclave. We've talked a little bit about some of these builds in the past, But essentially what we're doing is generating a bunch of mortal wound engines. They have multiple options for different things that deal a bunch of mortal wounds. If you do have anti-mortal wound protection, that's very helpful here, of course. However, some of these lists can build like 2 to 3 bricks of things that can generate 1 million mortal wounds if they need to. So we have Adrex Agatone with the Blade Guard Veteran Squad. So we get just a dude who hits really hard and rerolls a bunch, which is great. We have a Librarian with Immolator. So he gives +1 shots to your flamer weapons. So all of the Infernus Marines are attacking D6 +1 times. If we wanted to, we could also point a 2 command point stratagem, Immolation Protocols. Oops, excuse me, that's enhancements. Which gives you devastating wounds on your torrent weapons. So, and then you point Vulcan at the target and you reroll all your wound rolls to try to get devastating wounds. Now, in some cases, you can use this combination, and I've talked about this at length on something like Vanguard Veterans because they have, on the whole, more attacks, more general attacks. However, the interesting part of the Infernus Squad is that they don't necessarily actually have to kill you with devastating wounds. The Infernus Marines go up to strength 5. And I think that we can give them a bonus strength in Librarius if we take Pyromancy, or we get, bonus AP characteristic, not bonus strength. So we can have these guys be firing at strength 5, AP 2, because of the +1 for attacking within 12 inches, full rerolls plus potentially devastating wounds at D6 +1 shots. So we're firing a grand total of 30 on average, like 35 + 10, 45 shots that are all wounding most targets, I would say, on 5s, or fishing for devastating. And about half of those hits are devastating, and about half of those hits are going to be AP2 hits. We also then have a Librarian with Fusillade, so he gives you he gives you anti-monster, anti-vehicle 5-up, and you can get sustained hits 1 if you're in Pyromancy Discipline. As we talked about, we want that +1 AP for our flamer weapons, so in a lot of cases, we're going to be in Pyromancy a lot of times anyway. So you shoot at the Oath target with these guys, and they reroll everything. They go to they gain the sustained hits 1 off of the rerolls, plus they get devastating wounds on 5s thanks to anti-monster, anti-vehicle, even on their 2 damage heavy bolters. The Infernus Marine sort of wombo here does not require at all the Oath of Moment, period. The only thing it does is it gives them +1 to wound, which you don't necessarily need if you're just going to be rerolling to look for devastating. So you can Oath whatever these guys are shooting at, you can Vulcan whatever these guys are shooting at, and both units should kill whatever they're attacking in a single turn. Now the question is delivery, and a lot of times what we are doing is taking a bunch of sort of some contrivance of a vehicle or something to get these guys into the fight. We then have a Lieutenant with combi weapon plus Vulcan Heston. So Vulcan's going to be the guy who sort of enables the flamer combo, and then I guess he's not attached to a unit, but what we could do is just hide him in terrain. So because he's an independent character, he can just stand behind a wall somewhere. He gets his 12-inch like lone operative essentially from being on the ground, and then he can run out in the middle and he can point at something for the flamers to kill. The other thing too is that he chooses an objective marker when he's set up on the battlefield to get a 4+ feel no pain on, and because objective markers are also by definition, they are also let's grab his ability here. Terrain features. He's going to be able to hide behind a wall or something and get his 12-inch, quote unquote, lone operative, but also get a 4+ feel no pain and an objective control characteristic of 10. So he's very good at taking the middle of the table as well, while being super tough to kill. If you do have a unit with him, he basically never dies in a single activation. It's almost impossible. So you generally will get multiple turns out of him. In one act, all by himself, there's a conceivable chance that he does die, but it is difficult to get up to the middle of the table because, as you have to remember, these flamers are just in the center and they can overwatch at the end of the movement. So Salamanders do use the updated movement characteristics kind of in a big way. We then have an Impulsor to carry around the Blade Guard veterans. We have an Inceptor squad. These guys can drop within 12 to get their +1 strength, so they can go to strength 6 with Twin Linked, which is pretty good. We have a couple of additional Infernus squads. As long as you have Vulcan in the army, they get advance and do actions, so they're just very good utility units, plus they become OC2. We then have a Land Raider Redeemer. Well, I guess actually, in theory, the Land Raider Redeemer might be the one that's delivering the Adrax's unit, just because it can push it forward. I don't know where... I guess that could be mutable from game to game. It could also be this... probably that we deliver an Infernus squad with the Impulsor. The Infernus, like Impulsor boat, the fire brigade or the fire engine or whatever it is, can shoot the Infernus Marines out the top, plus shoot all the Impulsor shots, all at +1 strength. So the damage from the Impulsor plus the Infernus squad is actually pretty hot. In addition to the fact that it can advance and shoot all those guns as well, just because it's everything gains, the equivalent of assault in this detachment. 90% sure they're using Rampant Ingress was Overwatch in Librarian Infernus. Like, yeah, that might be the case. So like there is a little bit of a loophole right now where, because both Rapid Ingress and Overwatch happen at the end of the movement phase after active player effects, in the order that the inactive player chooses, because they're simultaneous timing, you can choose to target the drop pod with Rapid Ingress. Then you can resolve the Rampant Ingress. Then you can choose the Infernus squad to target with Overwatch. So it's like impossible basically to not get hit by it. Which feels like an oversight. I don't know. Being able to just Overwatch literally anything in your opponent's army at the end of their turn, with no counterplay from them, does feel a little problematic. But I don't know. I don't make the rules, chat. I only play the game. Which is interesting. Yeah, they can also action and shoot. That's a good call out to chat. So you can do all of that because you haven't advanced at that point, right? You just disembark your transport. You can do all that or drop the Infernus in out of the drop pod normally, and then do the action. You can also advance, in potentially, if it matters, you can advance the Impulsor, use the Assault Transport Disembarkation to disembark the Infernus Marine Squad. So you can put up to 12 OC, a 5-man Infernus Marine Squad. You can put up to 12 OC onto an objective, shoot with those guys, and then action the objective. That's pretty obnoxious too. If you roll big numbers, right, the Impulsor can be running 18 inches, disembarking 3 forward, and then you can like plunder and shoot your gun at the same time. Pretty good stuff, which is wild. Drop out at turn 1 twice in your opponent's backfield, yeah. Now, in fairness, like there's a lot of stuff here that does, like while we're talking about things that do need to get eroded, the drop pod is a good example of one of them. It ignores mission rules that prevented setup, but it doesn't ignore core rules that prevented setup. By rules is written, you're actually not allowed to turn on drop pods, but I do think, again, we needed somebody to fucking read this shit before the edition came out, and that does feel like it is an oversight. I think you were certainly supposed to be able to drop these guys turn 1, which is pretty wild. If you ramp on a drop pod, the Marine's still inside. No. You must disembark from a drop pod when you're set up on the battlefield. That's because of the drop pod rule. It's not like a normal transport where the where the unit like sits in there. The ability forces the unit out of the drop pod as soon as they arrive. So it's pretty wild. It's a pretty crazy combination. For some reason, Forge Fathers is only 2 detachment points. Yeah, it is very strong at 2. I would not be shocked if this list ends up performing more. That it ends up going, getting pushed up to 3. However, Some of these combos are still available in Firestorm Assault Force, which is, obviously like the paler cousin of Forge Father Seekers. There's also the fact that, like, let's be real, chat. The Space Marine Codex is coming out in like probably sometime not too far away. It hasn't been officially confirmed, but we know it is coming, and we're getting like model reveals from it already. So, some of the stuff might be changed from a fundamental level as we go. We also have, we have the Land Raider Redeemer to deliver the melee stuff. We then have 2 Land Speeders. These guys with Assault are pretty cool because they can advance, and especially for recon, force disposition, they can move, advance, shoot, move again. So their ability to get to different table quarters, for example, is incredibly effective. Plus, they're good at just like coming in and clearing out your infantry and stuff. What's interesting is that we elected to take onslaught Gatling cannons on them, so they're a little bit longer range rather than the flamers. And the flamers is just good there because if you were firing into Vulcan's target, you would get rerolls. But more multi-meltas in this detachment is more better in general. So that's good. Getting +1 strength and rerolling on these guys is pretty sweet. We also then have a pair of scout squads as well, just for utility stuff. So pretty wild stuff, Chance. We've seen a couple different builds, like a couple different varieties of this list doing pretty well. What's interesting is that like they haven't really I don't know if necessarily we have that much of a meta game quite yet, but we haven't seen them like crest to the top yet. And I think part of that is just like the fact that this list is it's extremely close range. So if you have something that can engage with you at a longer distance, it is problematic. Although it does seem like Dan Salmon's over here who's playing it, he lost with 91 points, and that was his only loss. Just wild. The results from these events is crazy. Like, these losses are where you would expect wins to be in 10th. The level of consistent scoring in this edition is absolutely fucking wild. Yeah. 91 point losses, like two armies that are doing exactly what they need to be doing to score. Now, I'm curious what actually that was against. It would be round 4. That was, oh my god, he lost. He won 95-90 in the final game. Round 4, he lost to Adeptus Custodes. Is that the Adeptus Custodes you literally just looked at? It is. That does kind of make sense. It's a bunch of Hurricane Bolters shooting into a bunch of regular Space Marines, which does track. But it was, what, 91-94. He lost by 1 secondary draw. Whoa, that's wild, dude. That is a close fucking game. I want to watch these games, dude. These are the games that like I live to live stream. I gotta get to more 10th or 11th edition tournaments, bro. That wasn't the only instance of this composition that we saw. We could talk about some other variations. We also saw the same at the dawn of 11th. Marci Novicki ended up doing the same, a very similar build, although he did not. Oh, I guess he just talked about his attachments. He was playing more infantry focus, which is a lot of the builds that we've seen, or I've seen personally, have been a little bit less focused on vehicles. Less of the drop pod plays and stuff like that, and more focus on sort of consistent infantry play, where you just have this like pressure in the middle of the table with so many Infernus bricks that have like a bunch of defensive technology on the, applied to them, and also are threatening these massive overwatches, which really prevent you from being able to engage them on objectives, right? There's no situation in which you're going to be able to profitably engage with these guys because they're going to cook one of your units on your turn basically every time. I love to have WTC scoring. Just everyone's getting 10s. Yeah. I mean, just I personally don't think like the March to Victory scoring is like particularly healthy. So I would not be upset to see it go, but I understand in the team format being able to like in a situation where a lot of games are becoming much closer, being able to maneuver yourself into 20-0s like is more of a showcase of skill, I guess, than it, or at least, you know, of positive matchmaking than it would be in previous editions. So maybe that's the reason that they keep it around, right? It's like if the score, there's less variance between the scores, any potential variance is more indicative of a superior team. But I do wonder if like the actual culprit there is the team differential, where there's a requirement to beat the other team by a certain amount in order to actually win the round. And I don't know. I don't know if that's the case. Let's talk about another list. So Marcin over here playing Adrax and a Blade Guard unit, a Sternguard veteran, a librarian with Fusillade and Sternguard veterans, obviously very strong. Another librarian with Temporal Corridor, so that lets them uppy downy at the end of the opponent's fight phase. And then if you are in, I'm gonna mess it up. I want to say that it is like telekinesis. Is that right? You get Deep Strike as well. One of the doctrines for these guys gives you Deep Strike, and now I don't remember what it is off the top of my head. It is telekinesis. I nailed it. I'm so smart, chat. So then you can Deep Strike these, and obviously the big thing with Sternguard veterans is when they want to shoot you, they want to be within 12 inches of you, so that they gain rapid fire, because they want to maximize the number of shots in order to fish for devastating wounds. So being able to Deep Strike these guys rather than forcing them to come off a table edge is a huge deal. Obviously that does unfortunately mean that you are unlikely to be in pyromancy at the turn in which you do that, but if your opponent has things that they could shoot out of strategic reserve, it is still helpful. Just get rid of 10-10 results, or you could like change the diff for 10-10 where it's like harder to get the true draw. I could see that potentially. I mean, there's a bunch of ways to fix it. This enhancement doesn't have a phase restriction. What do you mean? It works at the end of the opponent's fight phase. I don't understand what the restriction would be. Oh, the engagement, yeah. The engagement does I did play against it the other day, and the engagement thing was very frustrating. That feels like it is a mistake. Because they've, you know, the unit comes in and then you charge them, then they're just like, I don't give a shit, and then they leave. That's kind of stupid. But it does happen at the end of the opponent's fight phase, right? Yeah, I do think that the engagement thing is an oversight for sure. But they didn't write it down, so it is what it is. We have another librarian with Immolator for the extra shots, and then we have a Terminator librarian with Celerity, which is advance and charge. And then you also, if you're in Biomancy Discipline, get to fall back in charge, which is neat. Yeah, I mean, if I don't know how much I would be like designing my game plan around that ability, the ability to pull out of engagement, you know, remaining, because literally every other instance of this ability in the entire game, even the ones that previously had a no clause, no proximity clause, did end up getting one. So if you're like, aha, I am so good at 40k, I have removed my temporal corridor models from my opponent's engagement range. Well, I mean, enjoy it while it lasts, but you know, that gameplay experience may not be very helpful in a week or two. Who knows? We've got Vulcan Heston, no attachment with him. Blade Guard veterans for Adrax Agatone. 2 10-man Infernus squads. So this is where things get a little bit different. Instead of relying on the smaller Infernus Marine squads, this is we're just taking big giant units of Infernus Marines in order to sort of utilize all these abilities, being able to get one to Immolator people, and then another one that can up down and then drop within 12 and then shoot people, just using potentially Oath of the Moment, maybe using Vulcan's buff. And just if we are in Pyromancy, then they obviously go to AP2, full rerolls. You can cook a lot of things just with that baseline profile. We then have, not to mention the fact that, like, obviously you can do all that while doing actions. You can threaten Overwatch, everything we just talked about. We then have Land Raider Redeemer, a Impulsor, or a Repulsor, excuse me, to deliver one of the 10 mans. I imagine that the Redeemer is delivering Adrax, and then the Repulsor can throw out the other unit, the Immolator unit, and you can threaten with the Repulsor the stratagem Burning Vengeance, where if you shoot the Repulsor, the unit can jump out and shoot you back. So if you have close range, like Melt-A-Gun shots, for example, you'll just lose that fight to the unit that's inside the Repulsor. We have a Scout Squad for utility, big Sternguard Veteran Squad for the Fusillade guy, and then a giant regular Terminator Squad, which is fucking wild. Can they advance and shoot? No. They just vibe. Oh, they advance and shoot because of the detachment, of course. So they can advance, shoot, and charge. They can rapid ingress for free because they can put down the teleport homer, right? So, and then they don't care so much about cover anymore because it doesn't add to your save. So they can probably, like, if they shoot the Oath target, they're good for a reasonable amount of damage, and they're just a second big bulwark that can kind of like bully the middle of the table and potentially follow up after the Infernus Marines drop in and do a bunch of stuff. So in some cases, this detachment, it does have a 1 CP stratagem to fall back and shoot, but once it gets engaged, a lot of the stuff in this detachment falls apart. Like the Redeemer's still going to be helpful, and obviously you have Adrax who's going to hit like an absolute truck, but most of the stuff in the detachment doesn't really want to be in melee that much. However, if you're going through all this and your opponent comes back in to attack you, and then you can just Overwatch, kill a unit, and then free strat rapid ingress to put 10 Terminators behind them that can then run up to whatever is hitting these Infernus Marines and shoot something to death, and then charge something else and shoot them to death and punch them to death. That's fascinating. Regular shooty Terminator chat. There's a couple stratagems, of course, that are helpful there. We can do things like give them +1 to wound with Crucible Battle. So even if they're fighting like big high toughness things, the regular Terminators are going to be able to punch in. That's not what I wanted. Oh my god. Which is pretty cool. I don't know if we're doing too much else there. But yeah, it's fascinating. Well, yeah, I guess like Pyromancy giving them +1 AP is actually very relevant. Yeah, that tracks. That does make sense. And then like I think the Sternguard veterans are the unit that like really, really needs to shoot the Oath target. But once the Sternguard veterans are committed, and once they've done their thing, a lot of times your opponent just kills them. So having a second thing that is like really high value, beneficiary, I guess, of Oath of the Moment is kind of a huge deal. That's really cool. What a sick list, chat. Can you imagine? We are in a meta right now where a brick of 10 shooty Terminators in regular Space Marines is good. What the fuck? What is even happening to the game? I don't understand. I don't get it. Everything's ruined. Everything's ruined. The game is interesting. Might be threatening Burning Vengeance with Sternguard and the Repulsory Embark. Potentially. Or you... I mean, it's better with the Infernus Marine Squad, obviously, like when you want to be able to do it. The 4++ meta? Yeah. I mean, in fairness, I would prefer a 4++ meta than the 1+ meta that we had previously, because that was very silly and I didn't like it. I didn't like rolling my entire shooting phase and having my opponent remove no models from the table. That's not very fun. Yeah, Lieutenant of Champion of Humanity, the Lieutenant buff for Firestorm Assault Force, not Forge Father Seekers, can't combo with Epic Heroes anymore, unfortunately, because of the sequencing rules in the Muster Armies step, which is a decision that was elected to be made. Yeah. Anyway, folks, let's talk about we'll talk about demons for a moment. At the same events, we saw X and 1 demons using some Cavalcade of Chaos shenanigans. I expected to see, we saw a little bit in teams, and of course it's like a very skewy teams event, or teams list, but I definitely expected to see more people rocking either all the Warp Tide plus Shadow Legion, like mass infantry bricks, where you just run fucking goobers at your opponent and time them out. Or I expected to see Scintillating Legion. And we did see Scintillating Legion in teams. However, we haven't really seen either of those things be very popular right now, which is fascinating. I do think there is a legitimate point to be made that armies like that Librarius Conclave list, and instead, like, to a lesser extent, like Grey Knights a little bit, there is a breadth of anti-psychic defense that makes full psychic attacks, like full army psychic attacks, a little bit less interesting, because you're running into your opponent's entire army having a 4+ field no pain, which you're usually overpowering them anyway, but it does like give them this little bit of a leg up in terms of survivability, to the point that you're not going to consistently kill them anymore. And that is a big problem for the all psychic armies. So I am actually not too surprised that we haven't seen that list like take off in a big way. However, this list is really interesting and cool, so let's talk about it. Let's dive into Cavalcade of Chaos and Shadow Legion. So Cavalcade is the cavalry detachment for Chaos Demons, which is pretty wild. It gives them fallback and charge for your demon units. We're playing Purge the Foe this time around, though, so we're playing Shadow Legion disposition. Falling back to shoot and charge is good for basically all of the cavalry models, because they either have an impact effect where they want to be charging every turn and getting stuck into melee with especially things like Blood Crushers, which is really bad, or they have good guns if you're in the case of like the Tzeentch ones. However, Shadow Legion also stacks that with a ton of additional abilities. The most important one here being that all Khorne demons can advance, shoot, and charge. So the combination of those two things means that your Khorne cavalry units get fall back, advance, shoot, and charge. Or I guess like, not fall back and shoot, but that doesn't matter because they don't really have guns outside of like the Skull Cannon, I think, explicitly. So it's kind of awesome. That's a sick combination. And in order to, using that, we have a Skullmaster with Leaping Shadows. So that's the enhancement that gives you a 9-inch scout. So this unit that moves 10 is starting on the battlefield, moving 9 inches directly forward, then moving 10 inches forward, then advancing, and then charging. So they can cross the midboard on top of 1. Easily. It's not even that hard. With 7 Blood Crushers, the Blood Crushers are interesting because you have lost a little bit in terms of engagement. A lot of the damage they do, though, doesn't necessitate engagement, though. They just do damage based on the size of the unit when they charge, and then they roll their attacks. And the Skullmaster already is like where most of the damage of the unit is coming from anyway. So as long as you get that guy into the fight, it's good. But they did have a bit of a problem in 10th edition, which was that if you had a character in the unit, you had to 2x2 coherency them because they became 7 models. And it was really awkward because their bases are so big. You basically had to rank them like you were playing Warhammer Fantasy. It was really annoying. You don't have to do that anymore, which means you can do more funny slingshot things, especially with free movement rotation. In order to get your Skullmaster into the fight. So you do have a tougher time engaging people, but you do have more free movement. So you win some, you lose some a little bit here. And they're incredibly, incredibly fast. We have another Skullmaster with Soul Shattering Charge. Shows a Cavalcade upgrade. Cavalcade. That gives them a 3-inch engagement range when they charge, as long as they can target something that's within your normal 2-inch engagement range. So that entirely offsets the downside that these guys have of having to get a big base into the fight. So one of these units just basically gets to alpha strike your opponent. You then take another unit another 2 units, it looks like, of 6 Blood Crushers plus the Skullmaster that also can fight with essentially the entire unit. If we have a Rendmaster here, which we have 2 of, fucking sick, dude. These guys can actually buff their melee attacks to the point that their melee attacks become very legitimate. So the Rendmaster has a weird ability where at the start of the fight phase, he chooses an enemy, a visible enemy within 18 inches. He gives you +1 strength, armor penetration, and damage characteristic. However, he does not apply a named effect to the unit, which means that this ability is stackable. So you could, in theory, if you have, say, a single target on the table that you want to deal with, you run all your Blood Crushers up, or your Rendmasters up, you scout forward a Blood Crusher unit, you charge the Blood Crusher unit, and they push the Skullmaster alone to swing 5 attacks. And I'm going to go off, I believe he ends up being Strength 8, AP 4, Damage 5. And you have a strat for Khorne Demons to get Lance and +1 AP. So he can be wounding basically the entire game on 4s or better, pushing you through every single armor save. You do not get an armor save against him, if that is the case. And he hits you for 5 damage per swing. So you take, on average, like 7-ish mortals on the charge, and then he just kills a Land Raider by himself. On top of 1. What do you do? Obviously, we could split the effect to hit multiple different units, and so all of the different Blood Crushers are going to be, equally as effective. We then have a Bloodthirster with Fate to Darkness. He can give them +1 to hit, and then after he destroys something in the fight phase, he goes back into reserve, and they can rapid ingress and keep doing it. In order to allow for the scouting unit to get in there, we have a bunch of Nurglings. So 2 units of 3 and 1 unit of 6, so we can infiltrate up the center of the battlefield, prevent your opponent from screening your scout, and then you get to scout up and kill something. We have 3 Skull Cannons as well, which are also mounted units, which also get advance and shoot because of the Shadow Legion detachment ability. Their gun isn't like the craziest thing in the world. It's 9, 1, 2. It's like an autocannon basically, but they do force battle shock checks on you after you are hit by their gun. They're only 90 points. They also they hit okay in melee. Like they're not bad in melee, and they can fall back and charge. They can't fall back and shoot, but they can fall back and charge. Oh no, sorry, they can't fall back and shoot. What am I talking about? They can just do anything they want. Who cares? Cavalcade gives them fall back and shoot. So if you're engaged, you can fall back, shoot your target, and then charge back in. And then if you're buffed by the Rendmaster, this can be like strength 7, AP 1, 3 damage for their Maw attack, plus 4 more attacks at potentially like 6, 3, 3. So their melee output isn't terrible. But the other thing is that they force battle shocks on you. And in most cases, you're going to be in Shadow of Chaos if you're engaging the front line, which means the Skull Cannons are just sort of printing value. Because you're going to take mortal wounds if you fail that battle shock. And then you're going to have to continue to test and potentially take more mortal wounds. Because if the demon player takes Shadow of Chaos, takes midboard control, by the end of their turn, it's going to continue through your command phase until you recalculate level of control at the end of your command phase, which means automatically any failed battle shocks in the second turn are automatically going to hit you for additional mortal wounds. And they're only 90 points, which is very, very reasonable for that sort of combination of effects. Then we have a Cultist Mob, just to hold the back line and obsec things. So no Bellicor, 1 Greater Demon, like minimal shooting, not really many spellcasters, but a true cavalcade of demon goodness chance. Absolutely wild list. I wasn't 100% sure if cavalcade would be enough to make the cavalry demons actually viable, but it seems like it is angling that way. So it might be okay. All right. Whew. What a discussion, chat. With that, I want to talk about my favorite list of the entire weekend, and potentially my favorite list of the entire edition. I think it is my favorite list of the whole edition so far. I might just like jump off stream and go play this list right now because I love it so much. So this is also at the same event, the Dawn of 11th. And it was, here we go. Sveinung Noding running Crusher Stampede, Talons of the Norn Queen, Tyranids. So this is rules. So Crusher Stampede is like the Solar Spearhead kind of detachment for Tyranids. Gives you +1 to hit if you're below starting strength, +1 to wound if you're below half strength. Pretty good stuff. You also, if you are undamaged, get +2 to your objective control characteristic. So it buffs all your monsters. It has a million stratagems to buff monsters. It can give you like -1 to hit in the fight phase. It can give you ignore cover on your monsters. It can give you an additional instance of tank shock, which doesn't damage yourself, which is nice. So you could potentially tank shock multiple times in the same turn because you have one regular tank shock or crushing impact and you have one massive impact. Obviously, it has to be on 2 separate units, but you can do both of them at the same time. It's neat. It's pretty neat. We are comboing that with Talons of the Norn Queen, which gives you reselection on your Norn singular purpose abilities. So you can choose once per game to get a different target for singular purpose, whether that's an objective or a unit. You also get a bunch of really good stratagems. You get one really good stratagem. It's +2 strength in melee, which is essentially, besides the detachment ability, the only offensive buff that this detachment has, besides being able to do mortal wounds. Tyranids are like so hard up for damage output amps that they are like scrabbling for this. Like, please, sir, give me a crumb of +2 strength. Please, sir. I would love that. But in any case, it's all monsters. The whole list is monsters, basically. So we have Old One-Eye attached to 2 Carnifexes. These guys have Death Spitters with Slimer Maggots, so it's a Strength 7, AP 1, 2 damage attack. The nice thing, obviously, is that we can use Swarm Guided Salvos to give them ignore cover, so they can shoot through cover. They shoot, if they have 2 sets of these, they shoot 12 times per model, plus they have an acid spray, an acid bioplasma shot attack, which is an identical profile. So it's 24 plus 2d3 plus blast shots from these 2 guys. And if they get within 6 inches of you, they shoot their spine banks too, which don't really matter. But it is, potentially somewhere between 26 and 30 attacks. They get full rerolls from Old One-Eye. They can get ignore cover from the strat. They also get affected by, if they've lost any Carnifexes, they get affected by the +1 to hit and wound thing. Not to mention the fact that previously Old One-Eye had a weird idiosyncrasy where he never really got affected by the detachment ability, because below starting strength meant that you've lost a Carnifex. Below half strength meant you lost 2 Carnifexes, which meant by definition you had lost the Carnifex unit. However, that's not how it works now. So if Old One-Eye has lost his Carnifexes, he both retains his own hit rerolls ability and he gets +1 to hit and wound. So the Carnifexes in this specific detachment, not only do they shoot okay, but they also just turbocharge Old One-Eye. Old One-Eye becomes just a monster. He freaks the fuck out if you kill his Carnifexes. He's hitting on 2s, re-rolling, wounding basically the whole game on 2s. That's fucking nuts. For Tyranids, are you kidding me? Insane. So these guys are a great combination in this detachment. You do have a regular Hive Tyrant in the list, so they get advanced shoot, and they get lethal hits, which is important for a unit that's re-rolling literally all of its hit rolls. We then also have Swarmlord, and this is one of the things I love about this list. I used to play Hive Tyrant plus Swarmlord back in 9th edition, and it was the greatest thing ever. It was so fun. They were really hard to kill back in the day. They're not as hard to kill anymore. However, potentially getting +1 to wound on these guys is wild because they start winning the entire game on like 4s or better with Twin Linked, so they're just hyper consistent on their melee attacks. And you get 2 command points per turn. You get 1 free stratagem from the Hive Tyrant, which you're almost always going to use. Either that's going to be an Overwatch, it's going to be a Swarm Guided Salvos on the one of the other monsters, or you just burn a reroll somewhere. You just always are getting 1 stratagem within 12 of him. And then Swarmlord gives you a command point as well. And because you are no longer discarding secondaries as much in 11th edition, Swarmlords effect is basically always triggering. You're never like feeling bad because you have dead secondaries in your hand, but you already gained a command point from Swarmlord. You're just going to hold those secondaries and you're going to score them later. So your scoring is very consistent, which is evidenced by the fact that Sveinung won his first 3 games with 100-point wins. Just literally maxes his score in the first 3 games. Let's go. We have double Maleceptor to hold down the midboard. A Norn Assimilator with Synaptoprescience, which I believe is a 4+ invulnerable save. It is. It does cost you 1 trillion points. It is 25 points, but it makes the Norn Assimilator effectively as resilient as the Norn Emissary. He doesn't have the same defense against mortal wounds, but for a command point in the Talons of the Norn Queen, you can give him the 4+, feel no pain as well. They basically realized that the reason no one ever took Norn Assimilators is because they were inexplicably more expensive than Norn Emissaries, while being about twice as easy to kill. And so they were like, well, if you just pay a little bit of extra points instead of a lot of extra points, you can make them as difficult to kill as an Emissary, and they hit dramatically harder. We then have 2 Maleceptors, we have a regular Emissary, and we have 2 Tyrannofaxes. One with an Acid Spray, one with a Rupture Cannon. So the Acid Spray is good for sort of early game instigation. He's just going to drop Overwatch and shoot his gun every turn. If he's near the Hive Tyrant, he can advance and shoot. He's a very good like midboard control piece. And then the Rupture Cannon guy is mostly to force your opponent to play KG around your frontline monsters, because if they end up being too aggro, there is a non-zero chance that the Tyrannofax just straight up one-shots one of their vehicles. Not to mention that these guys will probably win a lot of gunfights with other vehicles because they have ablative armor. They have resilient organism is what it's called, but it's the ablative armor mechanic, so they can lose or turn 1 attack down to damage 0. And then as soon as you actually damage any of them, the Rupture Cannon hits on 2's baseline and can get another bonus to hit from heavy if it needs it. If you have any hit modifiers in there. Although it doesn't defeat cover, I don't think, because you are adding +2 to hit, but reducing their ballistic seal by 1, which doesn't stack. But yeah, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 11 models. They're all monsters. They all hit like trucks. You take Purge the Foe, because that's the Crusher Stampede disposition. So you don't have to worry about like holding your home. You just leave your home behind. And you just do murder on people. And I love it. I think it's sick. Which is cool. Yeah. Anyway, I love this list. I want to play this list. I hope it's actually good and it wasn't a fluke. Which seems sick. Anyway, chat. I think that's all the list I want to talk about. If anybody's anything else we want to talk about before I hop off, there are a couple other factions that did okay. But those were most of the factions in the larger events that went X and 1. Is Purge too good in my opinion? I think the jury is out. I am unwilling to say for sure. I do think that some people might... Like, people have opinions on it because Purge is very straightforward. It's like easily it's like the least thinky of any of the dispositions, because all you do is just like play like 40k and move and take objectives and kill people. However, I think it certainly seems like the some of the other dispositions are like more universal, I think, in that they're less matchup dependent, right? It doesn't really matter what your opponent's doing on their side, as long as you're doing your thing, you can score more consistently. So I don't know. Let's give it a month or so, and then we can decide whether or not we feel like it's one of them is just distinctly more powerful than the other ones. How does Adrax, the Champion of Humanity, not work? Because of how the muster armies rules are written. So basically, it has been ruled that, and this is, to my knowledge, this is the explicit intention of the rules designers based on their communication at events like ATC, which had GW like GW Open judges there and made this ruling as well. So both WTC and ATC, and a bunch of other circuits have made this ruling. So this isn't coming from my mouth. This is coming from everyone else. Basically, the muster army step, or excuse me, the fill army roster step of the muster armies rule is meant to be interpreted as a linear progression. So at the start of the fill army roster step, you select detachments, then units, then you attach characters, then you choose enhancements. Epic heroes cannot take enhancements, which means any unit with an epic hero in it is ineligible to be assigned any enhancements. Basically they've said that you do this last and you do it after you've already attached everything. Which means that if you have Andrax in a unit of Blade Guard veterans with a lieutenant, the lieutenant is not eligible to have an enhancement given to him. The crying is going to get Tau with 20% nerf across the board. I'm going to level with you, chat. I think they need it. Maybe not 20% across the board. I think that's extreme, but I do think Tau need something to be done. Tower. I think Tau. I think it's a knee jerk to say that like they need to get dumpstered or whatever, but I do think it's like it would be naive if you did not consider Tau to be, if not the best faction in the game, at least top 3. Are there any dispos I haven't played yet? I have not played Priority Assets. I've personally not played Purge. I played all the other ones, but I played against Purge a ton of times because everyone likes it. With new leader and support, can you put Librarian plus Lieutenant plus Intercessors? Yes. You absolutely can do that. Basically, like whatever abilities you previously had, support like is added on top of that and basically says you can add this character with a character that has the leader ability. Yeah. It is a far cry from Eldar at the beginning of 10th. It is possible to lose with Tau. I've said it a bunch of times before and I'll say it a million times again. We are in so much better of a spot than we have been in any edition transition up until this point. If you have not experienced an edition transition before, this is baby bottom smooth compared to every other one I've ever seen, which has had crazy imbalance, rules that just like fundamentally didn't work, like just insane buffs to factions out of nowhere. This is like, I don't know, most of the factions are pretty good. Some of them are a little strong, and there's some wacky rules, but like nothing that can't be easily ruled around. So there you go, chat. Yeah, I do use an emulator for the app. That was the only way I could get it onto the computer. Yeah, started 10th edition was disgusting. It was incredibly bad. I do remember all the Tau players zooming over the hidden roll. In fairness, like I don't even think Tau are mechanically that advantaged. There's like certainly some stuff where some of the new terrain line of sight rules and some of the layouts are like very conducive to them, but like the fact that hidden can block observation now is huge, which like lone operative and lone operative effects never did in 10th edition. And the fact that like the rush distances are so short in a lot of cases, like most armies can just engage you if you're in the midboard shooting the things, the other army can just like in a lot of cases just engage you in melee. It does make it really interesting for Tau. I do think that like in teams and stuff, Tau can have like weird situations where they can like choose their layout and just like pick the ones that have no cover on them, which is another can of worms. But in singles events, it does feel like they do have these failure modes. However, I think the Tau armies are too large. Like the issue is that their units are training so far up that it doesn't really matter if you're hidden or if they have to move into the middle of the table or whatever, because like all their shit's free basically. Which is wild. Like when you look at some of the comparative points values in the Tau faction, you're like, oh my god. A Star Scythe Battlesuit team is almost the same points cost as 5 Corsair Sky Reavers. What? What? This little unit of fucking 5 elves that like have scout versus versus like 3 Crisis Battleshoots that shoot 12 times a piece and have 5 T5 wounds and move 10 inches with fly and all this stuff. Crazy. Yeah. Absolutely wild. Are there some common house or tourney rules that have been adopted? There's like some pretty standard ones. I think some of the stuff I was talking about before can actually like I've incorporated a lot of them into my ruling document that I'm building. There's like some pretty standard ones. Like objective markers should be objectives or objective areas because like they just forgot to write that down. Like that's pretty standard. There's like I don't know, there's a bunch of other like weird ones in here. Stuff that's like how rerolling charges when you declare a target works, or like things that target like a charge that like give you a bonus to your charge when you target it for something, like doesn't really work in conjunction with the new rules. So I don't know. There's a bunch of stuff like that. The Sky Reavers can kill all 3 crisis suits with shooting and a grenade. Yeah, so if you get super lucky, you could mate with the use of a stratagem. You could kill a unit that is equivalent to your cost. But like the crisis just do that without needing any stratagems. Yeah, a lot of things in 40k are technically possible, Chad, in fairness. we can debate technical possibility all day for what potential profile matchups there are, but it's pretty wild. Oh yeah, reanimation protocol is a house rule one for sure. That needs to be house ruled. The raw of the Necron faction pack is that if you the rules is written is that you can reanimate your characters back to your units, right? And that's just explicit in the rules. The raw of the faction pack is that you cannot reanimate bodyguards back to the unit once the unit is destroyed. However, a lot of events have chosen to ignore that for reasons that I cannot fucking hazard a guess. An insane ruling, in my opinion, but it is what it is. Anyway, chats, I think I'm gonna hop off. Yeah, I think that's gonna be it for me. Question is if I'm gonna go play a game after this. I think I will, but I don't think I'm gonna live stream it because I have some extra work to do. So, stay tuned to my second channel. That's where all my games have been going. It is youtube.com/tacticalTortoise. We have lots and lots of games posted up there that I post constantly, several times a week. Big thanks to NC Conroy, my editor for that channel, who's diligently at work posting all my games. Really appreciate him. Also, he made all the maps for T5ST, which is sick. So yeah, I'm gonna hop off and go get some events worked on and stuff. I have a couple of videos. I have a train video that I keep teasing, which is mostly done, but then I keep getting distracted mostly by the DMCA stuff that happened last week. So that distracted me quite a bit. I have to remake my tutorial video because unfortunately for Tabletop Simulator, the Tabletop Simulator mod creators, they were like, they gave me the files for the update so I could incorporate it into my tutorial. And then I was like, great. And so I made it and I posted it. And then the day that I posted it, they said, oh, also, we've decided to rework entirely how Yellow Scribe functions. I was like, oh, great. So I have to re-record the whole Yellow Scribe portion. That's probably what I'm going to go do right now. So that expect that to get re-uploaded shortly here. But then also I'll have that train video out probably Thursday, I think at the worst. I would like also to do another video on combat phase movement now that we have a lot of experience with it and talking exactly how it works. I think there is definitely a video to be made about the most common like rules misconceptions in 11th edition, because there's a bunch of stuff that I have seen, played, but I have not found in the rules at all, which obviously requires some discourse. So anyway, chat, thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you later. Does it affect Necrons or any healing? For the reanimation thing, the thing with the bodyguard unit is explicit to Necrons. I can show you where it says that, by the way. It's in the Necron faction pack. It is this FAQ right here. So basically, it says, do rules that activate reanimation protocols only apply to a bodyguard unit whose attached leader unit is on the battlefield. If one or more unit from the models from the bodyguard unit are still on the battlefield, the answer is yes. So obviously, rules that if your bodyguard models are not on the battlefield, rules that activate reanimation protocols are not applied to that bodyguard unit. So if we look at the reanimation protocols rule, it says in your command phase, you activate reanimation protocols. So by the letter of the law, this is an ability that activates reanimation protocols in your command phase. Or this is a rule, it's explicitly a rule that activates reanimation protocols in the command phase, which means if you have no bodyguard models remaining, it should not affect the bodyguard unit. However, how I think it's meant to work is that it reanimates the characters and stops there. So you don't continue to add models back to the unit once the characters are full strength. Obviously, like, it's poorly worded and not explicit in that, but totally ignoring this FAQ is like pants on head. Because I think the reason that they left this here is so that it would shore up the situation where you can have like your bodyguard unit destroyed, your character destroyed, and then you Eternal Revenant back the character, and then he reanimates the whole unit back, which is clearly stupid. Clearly stupid and dumb. So that is only Necrons. The other healing works exactly how it describes in the rulebook. And also, like, if the characters are dead but their unit's still alive, of course the characters come back. That's not a difference at all. So yeah. Anyway, chat. That's a good question. That's good to... it is good to point that out, because it does exist in the rules. And assuming that it has literally no effect on the game is, in my opinion, erroneous. But anyway, I'm going to hop off. Thanks everyone for watching. I'll see you in the next one.